Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be my top 10 fall palettes. Today is officially the first day of fall. I know most of you can't wait for fall. You start celebrating it in August, but for me, I love summer. Summer is my favorite. I love the heat, and it looks like it's inevitable. It's going to start to get cold again. Anyways, I'm gonna go over my top 10 palettes. I have 5 indie, 5 mainstream. I thought it would be fun to go over both. So if that sounds good to you, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't yet. I would love it if you stuck around, but with all that, let's just get started. All right, I'm thinking that I'm gonna go one for one. One mainstream, one indie. We'll just go back and forth. That's what I'm thinking. Now, I am a neutral lover at heart. I am someone who's pretty basic. Like, I kind of stick with the seasons as far as colors and all of that good stuff. So a lot of these are very, you know, fall themed palettes. They fall right what you would expect a fall palette to be, but these are still some of my favorites and I wanted to shout them out. Some of these are available, some of them are discontinued. I'm not here to like sell you palettes. I mean, they will be linked down below if you want to purchase them, but also just a reminder to go through your collection and find some fall inspired palettes that you can pull out and give some love to. So let me start with the first mainstream, which now that I'm thinking, I'm not sure if it's mainstream, but I keep it in my mainstream drawer. It's the Artist Couture Supreme Nudes. Yes, this is a neutral palette, but it kind of has like these warm autumny colors to me. I mean, autumn is the neutral time, I think, out of all the seasons. Like summer, you're going to do more brights. Yes, some like golden hues. Spring, you're going to do like pastels. Winter is going to be more like icy blues, a lot of cool tones. So for me, fall is like the browns, the really like kind of orangey shades. I don't like too much of an orange. I kind of like something more on that neutral scale, not too warm tones. So you're going to see a lot of palettes like that. But to me, this is a great neutral palette and a great fall palette. It's one of my favorite neutral palettes, if I'm being honest. I think this is a really great formula. Artist Couture, I don't see a lot about them. I don't own a lot from them. I heard this palette, this was like really hyped up at one point, and it's one that if you bought it, like go back to it because it is top notch. I love it. Now the first indie I'm gonna go to is, I mean, I love all of these, obviously. I was about to say is one that I love, but I love them all. So I'm not gonna continue to say that. Clearly, if I'm talking about it, I love it, right? Right. Unearthly Sorcerous Smoke. Now, there is the Unearthly Fall Magic that I love as well, but I think Sorcerous Smoke is the one that I would recommend just overall to people, and it is still fall-like. Like you have these grungy greens, you have the oranges and peaches. The Fall Magic is a lot more red and like those typical fall changing colors. This is like more rustic, very similar to the Supreme Nudes, but just amped up a notch. I mean, you're going to get better shimmers. You're going to get better quality mattes. These are going to be very buildable mattes. I can't stop talking about Unearthly. It just took me so long to try them, and now I'm just obsessed with their formula. It is the perfect matte formula and shimmer formula if I had to pick. Barely any fallout, if any. The mattes are easy for me. This is not like an indie palette where you have to be super skilled at makeup. You can be a novice like myself and still come up with really pretty, impactful looks. So this is the first indie palette I want to talk about. The next mainstream palette, let's kick it back. These are all pretty old. I'm just kind of looking at my pile thinking to myself because I really just grabbed from my drawer and now I'm like kind of putting my thoughts together. Let's go over the Huda Beauty Rose Gold palette. A lot of people talk about the Rose Quartz for winter, but the Rose Gold is a good palette. This took me a long time to like open and use, and yes, mine doesn't look that loved because I'm pretty light-handed with makeup, and let's be honest, I mean, I've maybe done like 25 looks, so it's not going to show a lot of love, but I have used this palette. This is a warm-toned romantic palette that I can get on board with as someone who likes a neutral, leaning, cool color story. This is warm enough for me to give me what I want in a warm palette without being a pure sunset eye. I think Huda Beauty did a great job with her first palette. I mean, this is the remastered version. It's not the original, but I continue to like go back and love this palette. It is one of my favorites. I only have 3 Huda Beauty palettes left, like this big version. I have a few of the 9 pans, but I have this one, the Rose Quartz, and the Pretty Grunge. I decluttered the rest of them, and this one sticks around through declutter after declutter, and I think it's one that if there is any season for it, like just these copper tones here, but it leans more pink. So if you don't want something like super orange red, you have these pinks here, and I think this is perfect for fall. I'm definitely going to be using this one coming up. My next indie palette, let's talk about one that's discontinued, the Odens Eye Flora Story palette. This is the collaboration with Makeup Just for Fun. Here's what it looks like. Here's like my first kind of colorful palette. Is it that colorful? No, but it's dipping our toes into color, okay? So we have like this punchy purple. We have like this really nice green. I don't love, this is probably my least favorite shade in the palette, this tone of green, kind of leaning blue, but you can get something a little bit different with this, and I love this palette. This was actually the first palette from Odens Eye that made me want to purchase from Odens Eye. I picked up this one and the Sea Talk at the same time, but had just the Sea Talk launched, I wouldn't have bought anything from that collection. I primarily bought from the Perfect World collection because I loved this so much and just kind of added on Sea Talk, which now I love that palette. So I'm very happy with that. But this was my gateway to Odens Eye, and it still is probably one of my favorite Odens Eye palettes. I think it fits the best in fall. You can kind of wear it year round, but fall is where I want to give it the most love. Going back to mainstream, I pulled in my Natasha Denona Mini Gold palette. I don't have the golden palette, and I would consider that more of a summer palette if I'm being honest. And the gold palette is now discontinued. I thought I would talk about the Mini Gold. I don't know if this is discontinued or not, but I think that this is just nice and compact and easy to travel, like a really just good fall palette. I love greens. I mean, you're going to see a lot of similar tones. This is a fall palette video. So yes, you're going to see a lot of the same kind of color stories, but this is also one that's just, it gives you fall in a 5-pan. What more can you ask for? Like, I think out of all of my minis, this is the one that screamed it to me. I wanted to include something Natasha Denona, and this was my favorite one so far. I think this is the most fall. She tends to do, like while I was looking through my palettes for this video, a lot of them are just all year round, seasonally appropriate. Not that you couldn't use this all year round, but this one is one that I would definitely gravitate towards in fall. So that's why I decided to include it. And I think it's one of my favorite minis as well. I think I'm going to go through my minis pretty soon here and kind of declutter them. I kind of think I'm over just like the Natasha Denona collecting them all. As she comes out with just more and more palettes, I don't need them all. I don't own the Yucca, or I might have talked about that one, but I've never tried that one. I didn't really love that color story as much. I kind of do, kind of don't. I don't know. I'm on the fence about that one, but I'm sure a lot of people will be talking about the Yucca for fall. I just personally don't have that one, so I went with the Mini Gold instead. Back to indie. I've talked about this palette so much. I think the indie ones aren't going to be a surprise to anyone because I talk about my love for these indie palettes so much. The Simply Posh Cosmetics Cozy Cabin. I don't know the grip that this has on me. This was a holiday palette. I mean, you can see the cabin theming, kind of Christmassy theme, but I think this is more of a fall palette than a winter palette. Yes, you have like winter blues here, but after that, like this is fall to me, especially this half of the palette. I guess you have like transitioning from winter to, or from fall to winter. Like you have fall here going into winter. This is one of my favorite palettes. I really want to get the Simply Posh Coastal palette. I meant to pick that up on Monolith when they did their launch. Monolith is like a third-party website where you can buy indie palettes through the US to the EU, because then you don't have to pay as much customs is what I'm trying to say. Words will come. But it sold out before I got the chance to buy it. So I either need to pick up that palette and send it to some family in the States and wait for someone to come visit me, or I need to suck it up and pay the customs, or hopefully Monolith will restock it, but they said they're not sure yet. Back to this palette though, excellent formula. I just love palettes that make it easy for you. I love palettes where it's just like 3 looks, 3 shadows, 1 look. I even did a video doing 6 looks and just did down in the rows. It's so easy. I don't have to think about it. I can still get some color if I want to, a little bit of color for my neutral loving self. And I think this is a great just bridge from color to neutral, because to me, I think like greens are still, they're teetering neutral, right? Green and purple, I think, teeter neutral. To me, color is like red, blue, those bright colors. This here, like these 2 rows, are definitely still kind of neutral, and then here you for sure have your neutrals. And these warm tones are the types of warm tones that I love. So I wish you could still get this palette. I hope that Simply Posh restocks it, because it looks like they're trying to like get ahead of what customers want. They couldn't catch up maybe for a little bit. So I'm very hopeful this comes back for holiday, because it is one of my favorite palettes in my entire collection, not just for fall. Now, my next mainstream, I wanted to talk about Pat McGrath, and the first Pat McGrath palette that came to mind for fall is the, what number is this? I am not prepared. It's the Midnight Sun. I want to say this is number 9. Oh, here we go. It's number 6. Okay. Midnight Sun is number 6. And here's what it looks like. It has the purple in here, kind of periwinkle. This is definitely what's making me think fall. This palette didn't seem to go over that well with Pat McGrath's audience when she came out with it, but I did a video ranking all of my Pat McGrath palettes, and this ranked pretty high. It's one of my favorite Pat McGrath palettes, if I'm honest, out of all of the motherships. Now, I don't own all of them. I think I own 5, maybe 5 or 6. So this one being my favorite, when there's, I think, what now, at least 11, maybe 12. So I only have half the motherships, which is still more than enough. This one's still one of my favorites. I don't know what it is. I love the purple. I think it's just the tones, honestly. Like, this is the perfect kind of camel. I love these like toppery shades here. I haven't really been swatching anything, but this is like just that perfect silvery tone that kind of, if you wanted, turns it into a winter look. But I think this is the best fall palette. Unfortunately, Pat McGrath's just not in a lot of people's good graces, mine as well. Like, they're just not really coming out with like inspiring, revolutionary products like they used to. And for the price point, it's like too mid-range for what they're charging. So it's a little unfortunate, but I wanted to bring some love back to the old Pat McGrath days when we were actually really enjoying her as a brand collectively. Now that brings me to palette number 4 for indie. I'm going to save my favorite for last. It is the Lethal Cosmetics Midnight Serenade. This is what it looks like. I fell in love with this palette. I love Lethal's formula. My only con on this palette is the name isn't on the actual palette. It's only on the sleeve, and I tend to just toss these. So I had to keep that so I didn't forget. And also, Lethal used to have like their shades be removable, and now they are not. So I'm a little disappointed that I can't take the shades out, but let's be honest, I've never done that once and rearranged a palette, so I don't know why it bothers me. This is what the Midnight Serenade looks like. I did a dedicated video to this. It'll be linked down below, but I think this is the perfect fall color story. It's nice and grungy. These mattes are very buildable as well. That's the kind of matte that I like, so those are the mattes that I'm going to recommend to you. I don't like just a ton of pigment off the bat that you have to then like work to blend out. I want to be able to like have a wash of color if I want and then deepen it up. And that's why I love Lethal's formula. Lethal was one of my first indie brands that I tried, and what really got me to go down the rabbit hole with indies and want to try them all. I just love the formula. I think I tried like their charity quads first, and from there I purchased countless palettes from them. I really want to get their spring palette that looks like this. I think it's called like the Mellow Mellow Something. I haven't gotten that yet. I'm kind of hoping it goes on sale for Black Friday and then I'll pick it up. But that I will for sure be getting. I just love that color story so much. It's kind of like a lighter, springy toned version of this, but this is perfect for those dark fall looks. And there's not too much green in it, thank you. So I'll give myself a pat on the back for not picking a green palette. It does have like those deep rusty red shades though, and I think it's really pretty. You have like some shimmers that kind of contrast with it. So this is palette number 4 for indie. And then I have one left for mainstream and indie. I have the ABH Nouveau palette. I talk about this palette all the time. This is my favorite ABH palette. I never got the hype with ABH's formula in their components before this, with like the velvet finish, like the soft glam, the modern renaissance. I wanted to love those palettes as much as everyone else, and I bought those palettes thinking I would love them. I never gave them the love that I give this palette. This is, I think it launched for spring because of this purple, but honestly, like to me, this is a fall palette because you have like these rusty terracotta shades kind of. Yes, like you can make it spring with this purple, but I don't use the purple as much. I'm usually using this like peacock shade, which is kind of like a blue-brown flip, and this green wings, which is like a very soft moss green. Very much enjoy this palette. I don't know, to me this is like a lighter take on fall, and that's why I wanted to mention it. I very much enjoy this palette. I think it's a good year round, but specifically I think it fits best in fall. Then my very last palette, my last indie palette, is the Ensley Reign Groovy Gardens. Ensley Reign, they kill it. I mean, you have to admit, like, they are expensive, but man, they just kill it with their color stories. This is the perfect warm tone palette for me. I love shades that just are a little bit desaturated, a little bit muted, and this gives me that. These shimmers, while they don't look different in the pan, they are different on the eyes. Do I wish there was like a smidge more variety in the shimmers? Yes, but I won't nitpick too much. The depth of these are so nice. They just have different undertones, but you mostly have light shades or mid-tone shades, which is what I prefer. And then you have like just 3 mattes to deepen up or use as liner if you want to. Now, Ensley Reign does sometimes have a shimmer formula that I don't enjoy. It's primarily in the Cold Moon palette, which is a very textured, flaky shimmer. It doesn't really stick on the eye that well. It's a lot of fallout, but this one doesn't have too many of those. It has it in Free Spirit, which is this one. You just have to be really careful and like really rub your finger like this, and then use a glitter glue. And then Retro is also one that's like that. I mean, stunning. They look beautiful. I get why people love them, but they are such a pain to use on the eye. They get everywhere. So if you hate fallout as much as I do, I don't recommend it, but I get over it for this palette because it's only 2 shades. The Cold Moon has like 7 of them. Most of them are that kind of shimmer versus like this kind of multi-chrome, which is a lot more smooth. Like you can just see it doesn't have like all these flecks, which yes, it doesn't give as much of an impact, so I'm torn, but I'd rather just not have glitter all over my face. Anyways, I love this palette. I think it released for fall, and I think it fits perfectly for fall. So this was just a really quick short video showcasing my top 10 favorite fall palettes. I would love to hear your favorite fall palettes down below. Whether they're new or discontinued, it doesn't matter, because maybe I have them and maybe I need to pull it out and learn to love that palette a little bit more as well. I haven't given it the love it deserves. So let me know your top palettes, but after this is where I'm going to leave you all. I hope you're having a great one, and I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone.